Hey, book lovers. Want to hear a story? Welcome back to Storytime with Em. This is a mini episode from Em's Books and Cats podcast, where I am sharing my book SuperGym, a chapter or sometimes two a week. And this week is chapter 19. Now, as always, please be warned that SuperGym contains adult content and might not be suitable for all listeners. So listen with caution. Otherwise, please enjoy chapter 19 of SuperGym. Maggie couldn't sleep. Her empty stomach growled painfully. It had been days since she'd eaten anything, even in pill form. Her thoughts drifted. She couldn't focus on anything for very long, and most of her thoughts went to Trent. He'd been showing up after lights out for a few weeks, and she looked forward to their nocturnal fun. He was late tonight. She'd been laying in the dark for hours. Maggie wasn't entirely sure she could trust Trent. He claimed to love her. He broke the rules and put his own life in jeopardy to be with her. But he had been a trainer. At some point, he had pledged his life to Benjamin Pratt, and she wasn't sure he would choose her over a prestigious job at the SuperGym. Trent could be torn away from her with the simple offer of a promotion. Mr. Pratt would know this, and he would use it if it suited him. Their nightly rendezvous kept her safely in her apartment. No more illegal walks, no more junkies, no chance to escape. If Trent was assigned to keep her in her place, he was doing a good job. Maggie threw off her blanket and got out of bed. As she paced the floor, her legs wobbled weakly beneath her. She had always been strong, fat but powerful. Her body was withering away, and she was letting it happen. It was time to get out. Time to find a way over the wall. She was so consumed with her thoughts that she didn't hear Trent's stealthy step in the hallway. The door opened with a slight scraping sound. Trent moved soundlessly through the darkness to her bed. The springs creaked under his weight. Maggie stood frozen near the table. Something's not right. Hold still. Be invisible. Trent grunted as he hefted his bulk off the bed. Maggie. His harsh whisper was deafening in the silent apartment. She couldn't tell if he was angry or afraid. Maggie. He bumped into the table. The metal scraped loudly across the floor. The sharp corner jabbed her in the stomach, and she held in a cry. Maggie's heart was in her throat. She waited to see what he would do next. Shit. There was a sharp snapping sound followed by the hum of something electric. Purple sparks briefly illuminated the room, and she saw his face. He was looking right at her. Damn it, Maggie. What are you doing? You had me scared to death. I thought something had happened. He moved toward her and she countered. It was better to keep the table between them for now, until she understood what it was he was holding in his hand. What's wrong with you? Another snap. The room was suddenly bathed in purple light. The hum of electricity grew louder. Trent was struggling to keep his expression under control. She could see the anger building. Are you mad at me or something? Maggie still didn't reply. The veins in his neck were popping. He was close to losing control. She had never seen him this way. He'd always been kind to her, gentle. This was a different man. A trainer. One of Mr. Pratt's goons. Don't do this to me, Maggie. Not now. I've put everything on the line for you. If Mr. Pratt finds out about us, I'm finished. I'll end up at fat camp. Maggie found her voice at last. Doesn't he already know? Is that why you're really here? To keep me caged up like an animal? To make sure I follow the rules? What are you talking about? You're delirious. When did you last eat? Don't try to distract me. I know the truth. Trent made a sudden move around the table. Maggie didn't react in time. His big hands clamped down hard on her arms and squeezed. Trent, stop it. You're hurting me. He leaned in close. He still clasped the humming box in one hand, and Maggie could feel the heat coming off it in waves. He touched the crackling purple light to her skin. Pain washed over her, and she cried out. Trent hissed through his teeth. Quiet. Mr. Pratt has goons all over this place. Do you want them to hear you? Do you know what I have to do to get in here every night? Maggie shook her head silently. That's right. I think I like you better when you don't talk. He led her to the bed. Twice a searing pain shot through her arm as the electricity made contact with her skin, but she didn't cry out again. The air filled with the smell of singed hair and cooking flesh. Thor pushed her onto the bed and turned his back to her. He grabbed the chair, threw a leg over it, and lowered himself. He placed the box on the table and folded his arms across the back of the chair. He stared at her for a long moment. Maggie waited. Was this it? Would this be the time she didn't survive? Her life had been an agonizing torture for so long that she almost welcomed death and an end to it all. No more diets, no more exercise, no more trainers. Just beautiful sleep and peace. Not yet. Not like this. You beat Thor. You can take this, ape. Just play along. Fight back. Trent jumped to his feet and paced the room. He ran his hands through his hair and pulled. I don't understand this, Maggie. I'm a good guy. You know I love you. Why are you doing this to me? He waited a moment for a reply. He frowned at her continued silence. I don't want to hurt you, but you're making it so difficult. Why can't you just be a good girl and follow the rules? You've been doing so well. He moved closer and ran his hands down the length of her body. I won't let anyone hurt you. I promise. You'll be a success story, and I'll get reassigned to the SuperGym. Then we can be together. We can get married. He kissed her neck. Maggie shuddered and pushed him away. I knew it. You're just like all the others. You've been working for Mr. Pratt this whole time. Not for Mr. Pratt, for us. I knew from the moment I saw you that you were special. You changed everything. I was miserable out there, banished to the wall, one step away from being a fat camp trainer, while Thor lived in glory at the SuperGym. Thor. He growled the name. Maggie pulled her knees up to her chest and tried to shrink into the corner. Trent's expression was distant. He wasn't paying attention to her. She glanced toward the door. It wasn't far, but she was weak. She wouldn't make it. He would catch her if she tried to run. She forced out a shaky whisper. Thor won't let you come back. He's Mr. Pratt's #1 trainer. Trent laughed, and it made Maggie's blood run cold. He shook his head violently from side to side. You have no idea what you've done, do you? You really don't know? Maggie shook her head slightly. Trent laughed again and resumed his pacing. He was losing control. He couldn't stop laughing, and tears glistened on his cheeks in the purple light. You killed him, Maggie. You killed the almighty Thor. SuperGym's best. The ideal. He's dead because of you. No. She barely whispered the word, but it didn't matter. Trent wasn't listening. Mr. Pratt wanted you killed immediately, but I intervened. He sent his goons a week ago, but I intercepted them. I saved your life, Maggie. You owe me one. He slammed his enormous fist into his hand over and over while he paced. Thor cost me my position in the SuperGym. I was next in line, but he was threatened by me. I was always bigger than him. Mr. Pratt appreciated my muscles. Thor didn't want any competition, so he planted some junkies in my locker. He framed me, Maggie. He flopped onto the bed beside her. There were tears in his eyes. The purple light on the table buzzed and crackled. It seemed to grow brighter. I was sent to the wall. Demoted, humiliated. Mr. Pratt suspected Thor was lying. That's the only reason I wasn't sent to Fat Camp. He couldn't prove it, of course, and I had to be made into an example. He laughed bitterly. Do you have any idea how boring it is on the wall? Some days I really thought I would rather be at Fat Camp. The clients are hopeless cases, but at least I could dole out some punishment. Nothing happens at the wall. No one even knows it's there. Maggie squeezed her hands together and tried to stop her body from shaking. She had to get control. She couldn't let him see her fear. Trent reached out and stroked her hair. He tucked a loose strand gently behind her ear. It took all of her willpower not to flinch away. You changed everything, Maggie. You woke me up. You gave me a reason to come back. Mr. Pratt welcomed me with open arms. He suspected Thor was getting soft. He thought Thor was in love with you. Can you believe it? Maggie shook her head. Trent stood up and went to the table. He picked up the box. It crackled and buzzed urgently. I'm only sorry I didn't kill him myself. You did it too quickly. I would have taken my time and made him suffer. He smiled at her. You're really a softie, aren't you? You act tough, but that's all it is. An act. I don't know why I'm surprised. Addicts lack willpower. Addiction is a weakness. You had us all fooled, Maggie. We thought you were special. He frowned and moved his fingers over the box. The electricity jumped and licked at his palm. He didn't seem to notice. You're not special, though. You're just like everyone else. I have to admit I'm disappointed. He moved toward the bed and Maggie jumped to her feet. I never meant to disappoint you, Trent. I love you. I can be good. I'll do whatever you say. She hated the breathless, pleading tone in her voice. Trent shook his head sadly. It's too late for that. The light glowed brighter. Maggie took another step back. She was almost to the door. Just a few more steps. I am special, Trent. I can help you. I have powers. You're not the only one. He laughed at her look of surprise. You have no idea what kind of game you're playing, do you? He lunged at her. A bolt of electricity shot out and hit her in the arm. She screamed, and Trent laughed. No one can hear you, Maggie. No one cares. You're going to die tonight, and no one will notice. He lunged at her again. She turned and ducked the bolt. It hit the wall and began to smolder. The paint bubbled and peeled away. Trent was momentarily distracted, and Maggie seized her chance. She ran for the door. She twisted the knob and pulled, but it wouldn't open. Trent was laughing wildly. The wall caught fire. Flames crawled up it, and a deafening alarm began to blare. The sprinklers doused them with freezing cold water. Trent's device was extinguished along with the flames. Maggie tried pleading with him. There was nowhere left to go in the tiny apartment. He had her trapped with her back against the wall. You don't have to do this. I do. That's what loyalty is, Maggie. I wouldn't expect you to understand. I owe Mr. Pratt my life. I will do whatever needs to be done. He wants you dead. You're finished, Maggie. I wish it could have been different, but you've made it impossible. You should have just done what Mr. Pratt wanted. He lunged at her again. His hands closed around her throat. This again? All the trainers have one move. Do it. Finish him. Maggie's hand tingled. It flew out and struck him in the temple. There was a hideous cracking sound and blood began to pour down his face. His hands fell away and he slumped to the floor. The dark blood pooled around him. Just like Tessa. Her stomach turned and she retched violently. Nothing came up except a bit of bile, but the pain was immense. Her stomach felt as if it was ripping open. She ran to the door and yanked on the knob. The alarm was still blaring, but the door remained locked. She moved away from Trent's body and sat facing the wall. She closed her eyes and rested her forehead in her hands. She couldn't look at the carnage she had caused. Maggie stayed that way for hours, or what felt like hours. It might have only been minutes. The alarm stopped suddenly, and the room was plunged into silence. The only sound was an occasional drip of water from the sprinklers. The inconsistent dripping was maddening. She clamped her hands over her ears and tried to block out the sound. The room was cold, and she shivered uncontrollably. She turned off her mind and went away. She didn't think. She couldn't feel. She hovered somewhere above the frail, broken girl staring at the wall. This pathetic creature was not part of her. She watched until exhaustion finally overtook the girl. She leaned her forehead against the blackened wall and slipped into an uneasy sleep. And that is the end of Chapter 19, book lovers. I hope you're still enjoying SuperGym. I will be back next week with Chapter 20. If you like this podcast, please give it a like. I would really appreciate it, and tell your friends. Also, you can catch all things books and cats plus a different story every Thursday with the main episode of M's Books and Cats. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, keep reading.